Hey everyone, my name is Lily, and I'm 23 years old. I'm about to marry the love of my life, Jake, who's 28. Our wedding is just a month away, and honestly, the nerves are starting to kick in. We've been together since I was 19, and we've built a life that's full of love, but not without its share of bumps. For context, Jake and I met during my first year of college. I never expected to find someone like him, handsome, driven, and kind in ways that seemed too good to be true. His family quickly became a second family to me. They welcomed me with open arms, especially his father, who is one of the most supportive people I've ever known. But it wasn't just Jake and his family who became important to me. There was also his best friend, Sarah. Sarah is someone I always thought was going to be in my life for the long run. She was charming, always fun to be around, and more than anything, she was fiercely loyal to Jake. Our bond grew stronger as we spent more time together. We were both so thrilled about the idea of our upcoming wedding, and I invited all of our friends and families to the celebration. This included Sarah, of course. The party was supposed to be a fun and relaxed goodbye to my single days. I was excited, but little did I know that something would happen that would change everything. The party was a blur of laughter, music, and plenty of toasts. I felt surrounded by love until I noticed something unsettling. There was this odd energy between Sarah and Jake's best friend, Cammy. Cammy is in her late 20s and has always been a steady part of our group. She's the type of person who makes you feel instantly at ease. The kind of person who could walk into a room and start a conversation with anyone. She's outgoing, friendly, and never has a bad word to say about anyone. But tonight, something felt off. I could feel it, but I brushed it off, telling myself it was nothing. I couldn't have been more wrong. The evening went on as expected, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something strange between us, like an invisible thread between Cammy and me that I couldn't quite touch but was so painfully aware of. Later in the evening, when most people had moved to the living room for dancing and mingling, I went to the bathroom to freshen up, and that's when I heard it, the sound of someone quietly crying. It was coming from the adjacent stall. I paused, unsure whether I should go in or give them privacy, but then I heard a familiar voice. Cammy's. I couldn't help but listen. I know I shouldn't have, but at that moment I couldn't bring myself to leave. She was talking to Sarah. "Why him?" Cammy said, her voice thick with emotion. "Why her? Why did he choose Lily over me? We've known each other for years, and now she's the one he's marrying. I don't get it. I don't think it's fair. I don't understand." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I froze. My mind raced. This was insane. I couldn't wrap my head around it. Cammy, Jake's best friend, the woman who had always been so supportive of our relationship, was in love with him. And not just in love, but angry that he chose me over her. The betrayal stung deeply, and I felt this overwhelming sense of hurt that I couldn't quite put into words. I stood there in disbelief. How could she feel this way? How long had she been hiding this from me? Why hadn't I noticed? The thoughts kept swirling around in my mind, consuming me. She had always seemed so genuine, so kind to me, and now it felt like I'd been living in a fantasy. I wanted to confront her right then and there, but I didn't. I didn't want to ruin the night, especially not in front of everyone. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself, feeling my heart race in my chest. After a few moments, I managed to compose myself. I didn't know what to do or who to talk to, so I decided to leave things as they were for the moment and not make a scene. But I knew I couldn't ignore what I had just overheard. I had to tell Jake. As I walked back to the party, I tried to focus on the faces around me, on the laughter and the music, but my mind was racing. I felt trapped in my own thoughts. How could I handle this? Should I confront Cammy? Should I talk to Jake immediately? Or wait for a better moment? I was so overwhelmed by the situation that it felt like the weight of the entire world was on my shoulders. After a while, I found Sarah in the kitchen, and I pulled her aside. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though it was clear I was on the edge of breaking down. I explained what I had overheard in the bathroom. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, but she quickly composed herself. "I had no idea," she said softly. I guess I always knew that Cammy had a thing for him, but I didn't think it was like this. She's never really talked about it with anyone." I felt the weight of Sarah's words as they sank in. I could barely process everything, and I wasn't sure how to move forward, but I knew one thing for sure. This had to be addressed. I couldn't go on pretending that things were normal when the one person I thought I could trust had just turned everything upside down. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Cammie's face, her tears, and the hurt in her voice as she confessed her feelings for Jake. My heart hurt for her, but more than anything, I felt betrayed. How could she have kept this secret from me for so long? How could she let her feelings for Jake interfere with my happiness? And worst of all, how could I let this ruin everything I had been working for with Jake? My mind was in a constant whirlwind, and the fear of losing the one person who meant the most to me, Jake, was suffocating. I knew I had to confront Cammie, but how? How could I approach this without making things worse? How could I keep my wedding from turning into a disaster? As the hours dragged on, I knew that this was only the beginning of something much bigger, something that I was not sure I was ready for. I had to figure it all out before the wedding, before the day that was supposed to be the happiest of my life turned into something unrecognizable. But I couldn't do it alone, and that's when I decided it was time to talk to Jake. The next day, I found him sitting at the kitchen table scrolling through his phone. He looked up at me, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the worry that mirrored my own. I sat down beside him and took a deep breath. It was time for the truth. "Jake," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "I need to talk to you about something." He looked at me with concern. "What is it?" And that's when I told him everything. After I told Jake what happened, the last thing I wanted was for the drama to spill over into our celebration. I didn't want this to ruin what was supposed to be one of the happiest nights of my life. So, I tried to shake it off as best as I could, even though my mind was still reeling from what I had overheard. The party was in full swing by the time I returned to the main room. Music was blasting, everyone was dancing, and laughter filled the air. But I felt like I was in a fog. Everyone seemed so carefree, oblivious to the storm brewing just under the surface. I smiled and chatted with friends, trying to enjoy myself, but the words from that conversation kept echoing in my head. Why did he choose her? Why not me? I couldn't escape them. Cammie's words replayed in my mind like a broken record. I tried to focus on the people around me, but it was hard to ignore the weight of what had happened. The whole thing felt like a betrayal, like I had been played. And the worst part was that Cammie had always been someone I trusted. She'd been a part of my life for so long, I couldn't understand how she could harbor these feelings, let alone express them right before my wedding. I tried to hold it together, but it wasn't easy. The party was winding down, and most people were getting ready to head out, including Cammie. She had her coat on and was chatting with a few of Jake's cousins when I made my decision. I had to talk to her. I couldn't just let this go without some kind of confrontation. It was eating me alive, and I needed answers. I pulled Sarah aside before going to find Cammie. "I need to talk to her," I said, my voice tight. Sarah gave me a sympathetic look but didn't try to stop me. She could see I was struggling. "Just be careful, okay?" she said. "I don't think Cammie meant for it to blow up like this, but I get why you're upset. I can't pretend like nothing happened," I replied. "I have to know what's going on in her head." Sarah nodded, understanding. She squeezed my shoulder, and I went to find Cammie. She was standing near the door, talking to Jake's cousin. I took a deep breath and walked toward her. "Cammie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She turned toward me, her face lighting up with a friendly smile. "Hey, Lily, you look so beautiful tonight," she said, clearly unaware of what was coming. But I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. "Cammie, can we talk for a minute?" I asked, my voice flat. Her smile faltered slightly, but she nodded and excused herself from the conversation with the cousins. We stepped into a quieter corner of the room where I could feel the tension already building. "Look, I don't know how to say this, but I heard what you said earlier," I began, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. Cammie's face immediately shifted, and I could see the color drain from her cheeks. Her eyes darted nervously around the room, clearly trying to process what I was saying. "You heard?" she asked quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Yeah," I said, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I heard everything. About how you feel about Jake, about how you think I don't deserve him. You told Sarah you've been in love with him for years, and you don't understand why he chose me over you." Her face turned pale, and for a moment she said nothing. I could see the guilt and the shame in her eyes, and part of me felt sorry for her. But the other part, the part of me that was hurt, confused, and angry, Wasn't ready to show her any sympathy just yet. I never meant for you to find out like this, she stammered. Her voice cracked, and she looked like she was about to break down. I didn't want to hurt you, Lily. I really didn't. I was confused. And it's not like I've been hiding it from everyone, but I didn't think it would come out like this. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to hold it together. Confused about what? How could you keep something like this from me for so long? How could you not tell me? I trusted you, Cammy. You were supposed to be my friend. I am your friend, she insisted, her voice pleading. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I didn't. It's just that when I found out about you and Jake, when I saw how serious you two were, it just hit me all at once. I realized that I wanted him, that I'd always wanted him, and I couldn't stop it. But I never meant for it to affect our friendship. Not like this. I felt a rush of emotions, a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. How could she say these things and then expect me to just forgive her? I had never once suspected that she had feelings for Jake. Not once. And now it was all out in the open, and I didn't know what to do with it. I don't know what to say to that, I replied, my voice tight with emotion. You've crossed a line, Cammy. You can't just pretend like everything's fine after something like this. How am I supposed to trust you again? How am I supposed to believe that you'll support me and Jake when you're holding on to these feelings? Cammy looked like she was on the verge of tears, her lips trembling as she struggled to find the right words. I'm sorry, Lily. I really am. I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I'll do whatever it takes to make this right, but I knew I couldn't just move past it. I couldn't ignore the fact that my best friend had feelings for my fiancé. I couldn't ignore the weight of what had happened, and I couldn't pretend that everything was fine. I don't know what's going to happen next, I said, taking a deep breath. But I need some space to think about this. I need time to figure out what this means for us. I understand, she whispered. I'll leave. I won't come to the wedding. Just know that I'm truly sorry. And just like that, Cammy left the room, and I was left standing there, completely shaken. My mind was still reeling, and I had no idea how to move forward. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something, anything, to make this all go away. But all I could do was stare at the empty space where she had just been and wonder what had just happened to my life. I didn't know how I was going to face Jake with this. I didn't know how we would come back from this. But one thing was clear. Things were never going to be the same. I stood there for a moment, processing everything. The party was still going on, the noise from the living room faintly leaking into the hallway, but it all felt distant now. I felt completely drained, like I'd just run a marathon without moving. My heart was heavy, my stomach a tight knot. I couldn't just go back to pretending everything was fine when nothing was. Cammy's confession had shattered something inside me, and I didn't know how to fix it, or if I even could. The worst part of it all? I didn't even know how to talk to Jake about it. I knew I needed to. I knew he had to know the truth, but a part of me didn't want to shatter his image of Cammy. She was his best friend, and as much as it hurt, I didn't want to be the one to ruin that for him. I wasn't sure if it was my own selfishness, trying to protect myself from more pain, or if it was just an instinct to spare him the confusion. But I knew that wasn't fair. I couldn't lie to him, not about something this serious. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my nerves. My mind was racing, and I needed to clear it. I needed to talk to Sarah, but before I could move, she walked into the hallway. I could tell by the look on her face that she was concerned. She had probably heard the conversation between Cammy and me, and I knew she could feel the tension between us now. How are you holding up? Sarah asked softly, her voice laced with worry. She leaned against the wall, her arms crossed over her chest. I don't know, Sarah, I admitted, my voice breaking slightly. I honestly don't know what to feel right now. I've never felt so betrayed. I trusted her. I always thought she had my back. And now I don't even know what to do with all of this. Sarah gave me a sympathetic look, her eyes soft but tinged with concern. I get it, Lily. I know this is a lot to take in. Cammy's always been a part of your life. And now it's a whole new level. But you need to talk to Jake. You need to tell him what's going on. He deserves to know. And you deserve to be honest with him. I nodded, her words cutting through the fog in my mind. She was right. I couldn't keep this to myself. I couldn't hide it from Jake, no matter how hard it was. You're right, I whispered. But I don't even know how to start that conversation. I don't know what to say without making it worse. Sarah stepped closer, offering a small smile. You don't have to have all the answers right now. Just be honest with him. Tell him how you feel and let him make his own decisions. That's all you can do. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I guess I have to tell him. I can't keep carrying this around. Sarah nodded and gave me a quick hug before I headed back to the main room. Jake was sitting on the couch, his fingers tapping anxiously on his phone. I could tell he was waiting for me, but I didn't know if he was ready for the storm that was about to hit. My hands trembled as I walked toward him, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Jake, I said softly, sitting down beside him. He looked up at me, his expression concerned. Are you okay? He asked, his voice full of worry. I could see the lines of tension in his face. He must have known something was off by now. I need to talk to you about something, I said, my voice shaking. Something happened tonight. I don't know how to explain it, but I need you to listen. He sat up straighter, putting his phone down. What happened? Is everything okay? I swallowed hard, gathering my thoughts. Earlier tonight, I overheard a conversation. Cammy, she admitted that she's been in love with you. She said that she's always had feelings for you and that she doesn't understand why you're marrying me instead of her. I paused, watching his reaction carefully. Jake's eyes widened in shock. What? Cammy said that? I nodded, my heart racing. Yeah, I couldn't believe it either. She told Sarah she's been in love with you for a long time, and she doesn't think it's fair that you're with me. She said she doesn't get why you'd choose me over her. Jake stared at me for a moment, his mouth slightly open in disbelief. His eyes darkened, and I could see a flicker of anger pass through them. That's unbelievable, he muttered under his breath. I never knew she felt that way. But why didn't she tell me? Why keep it a secret? I don't know, I replied, feeling the lump in my throat growing. I don't know why she never said anything, but I couldn't just pretend like I didn't hear it. I had to tell you. I had to be honest with you about what's been going on. Jake shook his head, clearly processing what I had just told him. I never had feelings for her, Lily, not like that. She's my friend, my best friend, but I never knew she felt that way. I don't even know how to deal with this. I know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do either. I feel betrayed. I don't know if I can have her at the wedding now. I don't know if I can trust her after this. Jake's expression softened, and he placed his hand on mine. I understand, Lily. This isn't your fault. I don't want anything to come between us, especially not now. We're getting married in a month. This should be the happiest time of our lives. And I'm not going to let Cammy or anyone else ruin that. His words helped soothe some of the panic that had been growing inside me, but I still felt this heavy weight on my chest, the uncertainty of what to do next. Cammy had been a part of our lives for so long. How could I just cut her out of everything? And more importantly, how could I trust her again? I don't know what happens next, I said softly, but I need you to promise me something. Promise me that we'll handle this together, that we'll figure it out. Jake squeezed my hand and nodded. I promise, Lily. We're in this together, no matter what. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, but it was short-lived. I knew that the road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There was still so much to figure out, so much to work through, but at least I knew Jake and I were on the same page. We would face this together, whatever this turned out to be. Jake's expression changed the moment I finished telling him everything. His face went pale, and I could see his jaw tightening. He stared at me for a long while, as if he was trying to process the words I'd just said. I knew it wasn't easy for him, hearing that the one person he considered a best friend was hiding these feelings, especially with the timing of everything. Are you serious? He finally managed to say, his voice low and a little shaken. This, Cammy, really? She's been acting like everything's fine, and now this. What the hell is going on with her? I nodded, the knot in my stomach growing tighter. I heard it with my own ears, Jake. She was talking to Sarah. She said she was in love with you, that she didn't understand why you chose me. She's been harboring these feelings all along, and I don't know how long this has been going on. Jake ran his hands through his hair, pacing back and forth in the small kitchen. This is insane. Cammy, I thought I knew her. I thought she was just this friend who had my back, who would be happy for us. How could she hide something like this? His voice cracked as he spoke, and I could see the hurt in his eyes. I tried to keep my composure, but it was hard. Every word that came out of Jake's mouth, every reaction he had, was another reminder of the betrayal I felt. I wanted him to be angry, to share in my frustration, but I also didn't want him to get caught up in the drama. I needed him to stay grounded for both of us. "You're angry, and you have every right to be," I said softly, trying to calm the storm brewing in his eyes. "But we have to be careful. We're getting married in a month. This could destroy everything, and I don't want that. We can't let her affect us, Jake." Jake stopped pacing and turned to me, his face filled with confusion and anger. "I don't understand. How did it get to this point? Why wouldn't she just tell me? If she really cared about me, why keep it hidden? Why let it get so messed up?" I couldn't answer him. I didn't know why Cammy had kept this from him, why she'd let her feelings fester in silence. All I could do was tell him what I knew and hope that he would understand. I think she never wanted to admit it. Maybe she thought it would make things awkward, or maybe she thought I wouldn't choose her. But it doesn't matter now, Jake. We can't change what's happened, but we can decide what happens next. Jake's gaze softened, and he came over to sit beside me. "What do we do, Lily? What are we supposed to do with all this?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The future seemed so uncertain now, and it felt like we were standing on the edge of something we couldn't control. "We have to talk to her, Jake. We need to make it clear to her how serious this is, how her feelings are impacting us. But we can't let it ruin everything. We need to focus on the wedding, on us." Jake nodded slowly, his fingers tapping nervously on the kitchen table. "You're right. I want to call her. Make sure she knows this isn't a joke. But I also don't want to make it worse by confronting her too aggressively." I placed my hand over his, grounding both of us in the moment. "Let's think this through. We can't rush into things. We need to be calm, clear, and firm. And then we need to set boundaries. She can't be a part of our lives if this is going to continue." Jake sighed, the weight of everything pressing down on him. "I just never thought something like this would happen. Not with her. She was supposed to be the one person I could count on. And now, it feels like everything's falling apart." I didn't know what to say to make it better, because honestly, I felt the same way. The betrayal stung, and it was hard to imagine how we could move past it. But I knew one thing for sure. We had to protect what we were building, our relationship, our wedding, our future. It was too important to let something like this destroy it. "I know, Jake," I whispered. "I know it hurts. But we have to keep moving forward. We've been through so much together, and I'm not going to let Cammy or anyone ruin what we've worked for. We have to make this right together." Jake looked at me, his eyes softening. "I don't want to lose you over this, Lily. You're everything to me. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure this doesn't tear us apart." His words comforted me more than I thought they would. In the chaos of everything happening around us, it was good to know that he was as committed to this relationship as I was. I needed him now more than ever. We decided then and there that we would confront Cammy together. It wasn't going to be easy, and I was nervous about how it would all go down, but it was the only option. I couldn't let this shadow hang over our wedding, especially when it was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. "I'll talk to her," Jake said, "but I need you with me. I need you to be there. I can't do this alone." "I'll be there," I reassured him. "We'll do this together. We'll make sure she understands. We can't let this keep hanging over us." The day of the confrontation came sooner than I had expected. Jake called Cammy to ask her to meet us at the house. She agreed reluctantly, and I could tell by the tone of her voice that she wasn't happy about it. When she showed up, I could see the apprehension on her face. She wasn't the same confident, bubbly woman I had known. The tension in the air was palpable, and I knew that nothing was going to be the same after today. Jake started the conversation, his voice firm but not angry. "Cammy, we need to talk. What you told Sarah, about me, about Lily, it's not okay. You've been hiding these feelings from me for God knows how long, and it's affecting everything. We can't just pretend it didn't happen." Cammy's face turned pale. She looked down at her hands, her shoulders slumping. "I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered. "I never thought it would get this far. I just didn't know how to handle it." "You should have told me," Jake said, his voice quieter now. "You should have told me sooner, so we could have worked through it. But you didn't, and now, it's too late." "I'm sorry," she said, tears starting to well up in her eyes. "I didn't want to ruin anything. I didn't want to lose you." "We can't go back, Cammy," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. This is done. You need to accept that." The words hung heavy in the room, and though I felt sympathy for her, I couldn't let her mistake take control of our lives any longer. "You need to move on, Cammy," Jake said, his voice now calm, "and you need to stay away from us. We can't have this drama in our lives anymore." And just like that, the chapter closed. Jake and I were both exhausted from the emotional roller coaster we had just been through. Confronting Cammy hadn't been easy, but now we had to figure out how to move forward. The wedding was getting closer, and the last thing I wanted was for her presence to hang over us like a shadow. "Lily, I know this isn't easy," Jake said one evening as we sat together, planning out the last details of the wedding. "But I'm glad we're on the same page. I'm not going to let Cammy ruin this. I want this day to be about us, nothing else." His words were reassuring, but the reality of the situation still felt heavy. There was so much at stake. I knew we were doing the right thing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to untangle. We had to stay focused, not just on the wedding, but on our future. We decided to keep everything low-key for the rest of the planning. No more drama, no more distractions. I wasn't going to let Cammy's feelings overshadow what Jake and I had worked so hard to build. The wedding would happen, and it would be the fresh start we both needed. "I'm with you, Jake," I said, my voice steady now. "We'll get through this. Together." Jake nodded, his expression softening. He reached for my hand, and in that moment, everything felt clearer. We had been through so much already, but I knew we could handle whatever came next. With him by my side, I felt stronger. As the days passed, the tension began to fade. We focused on the details of the wedding, making sure everything was just right. But in the back of my mind, I knew we had made the right decision to keep Cammy out of our lives for now. Our future was too important to let anyone or anything get in the way. This was our moment, our time to shine, and nothing was going to ruin it. After everything that had happened, I found myself reflecting more and more on what was really important. The weight of Cammy's confession, the way it had shaken me, had started to lift, but the uncertainty of what to do next was still there. Jake and I had talked things over endlessly, trying to make sense of it all, but at the end of the day, we both knew what we needed to do. We needed to protect our happiness and our future, even if it meant making difficult decisions. The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with nervous energy. I was so ready to marry Jake. I loved him with everything I had, and despite everything that had happened with Cammy, I still wanted to make this work. I wanted our wedding to be about love, about the commitment we were making to each other. But I also knew that some things had to change for that to happen. Jake and I had agreed, after much discussion, that Cammy couldn't come to the wedding. It wasn't because we wanted to punish her. It wasn't because we hated her or didn't care about her, because I still did, in some way. But it was about boundaries. It was about the fact that what she'd said to Sarah, that she was in love with Jake, had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. How could I possibly let someone who felt that way about him be at our wedding? How could I trust that her feelings wouldn't cause more problems down the road? I was afraid of the drama, the tension, and the discomfort that would be in the air. I didn't want our day to be ruined by unspoken emotions or awkwardness. I needed to focus on the future with Jake, not on something that had happened before. The last thing I wanted was for our special day to be overshadowed by the unresolved tension between Cammy and me. And as much as I wanted to be understanding, I also knew that this was about our marriage, our life together, and the foundation we were building. Telling Cammy was not easy. I didn't want to hurt her, but I also couldn't ignore what had happened. I was direct, as kind as I could be, but firm in my decision. "Cammy, I care about you, but this is too much for me. I need to make sure my wedding is a celebration of love and not a place where unresolved emotions take center stage." "I can't have you there." Her reaction was heartbreaking. She apologized again, saying she never meant to hurt me. She explained how confused she'd been, how she'd never known how to deal with her feelings. But the truth was, I couldn't go back. I couldn't pretend like nothing had happened. She left the conversation with the understanding that this was the best decision for everyone, even though it wasn't easy. Jake supported me through all of it. I could see the struggle in his eyes. He didn't want to lose Cammy, but he knew this was the right thing to do. We both agreed that it was better to deal with the pain now rather than let it fester and become something bigger. Our wedding had to be about us, about the commitment we were making to each other, We couldn't let the past cloud our future. In the days that followed, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't that I didn't care about Cammy or what had happened. I did, but I had to protect what mattered most. I was marrying Jake. That was the priority. I had spent so much time trying to keep the peace, trying to make sure everyone was happy, but this time, I had to be selfish. I had to think about what was best for me, for us, and for the life we were about to start together. The wedding was getting closer, and I could feel the excitement building. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. But it was ours. It was ours to shape, ours to enjoy, and ours to remember for the rest of our lives. I was ready to leave all the drama behind. It was time to move forward. I didn't know exactly what the future held, but I knew that with Jake by my side, we could handle anything. We had been through a lot together already, and this was just one more hurdle. We would get through it, and we would come out stronger on the other side. I knew that. As for Cammy, I hoped that someday she would understand. I hoped she would find peace with her feelings and that she would eventually heal. But I couldn't carry her burden anymore. I had to focus on my own happiness, on the life I was about to build with Jake. Our wedding was everything I'd hoped for. It was beautiful, joyful, and filled with love. Jake and I exchanged vows with full hearts, and in that moment, I knew we were ready for whatever came next. We had each other, and that was all that mattered. Looking back, I realized that sometimes we have to make hard decisions. Sometimes we have to let go of people and situations that don't serve us, no matter how much it hurts. But that's how we grow, how we build the lives we want. I had made the decision to move forward with Jake, to start this new chapter of our lives together, and I knew that no matter what, I wouldn't look back. We were in this together, and that was enough for me.